Let's see what the RTX 5090 can do when paired with the 4K monitor. We'll test regular native experience as well as ray tracing and DLSS. To test this, I paired the MSI Gaming Trio RTX 5090 with the Ryzen 7 9800X 3D CPU, and we'll be experiencing the games today on one of the best monitors. This is MSI QD OLED 272URX 4K 240Hz. If you are interested in any of the products featured in this video, you can find them on Amazon at the links in the description below. There is no need to spend that much money on Windows 11 Pro when you can get it much cheaper at cdkeyoffer.com. Additionally, use discount code IVADIM to get 25% off and bring the total price down to $22. Furthermore, you can find Windows 10 Pro as well as Microsoft Office at much cheaper prices as well. Get yours now at the link in the description below, and don't forget to use discount code IVADIM to get 25% off. Let's start our testing with one of the latest games, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. We are at 4K resolution, image quality is set to experimental, which is the absolute maximum graphics quality in this game. Unfortunately, there is a limit, FPS limit here, 240, because this is a 240 Hz monitor. FPS cannot be uncapped. FOV is set to 100, and we are using native resolution at the moment. This game doesn't have any ray tracing features, although it would have been nice to actually have that in this particular game, because this is kind of a medieval life simulation, so photorealism would have been very much appreciated in this game. Although I must say that the game looks pretty good as is. I've played for a couple of hours already, and it is very much enjoyable. I will definitely play this game more. It is fun. The dialogues are just brilliant. Whoever wrote them is a genius. I love it. And as you can see, the performance is great as well. Even at the highest graphics quality preset, we're still getting 90 plus FPS, 80 plus in other scenes, and even close to 100, above 100 in some scenes. The GPU is consuming above 500 watts, 520 at the moment. That is a lot. And the CPU is working as well, 75 watts. Even though this is one of the fastest gaming CPUs out there, the 9800X 3D, it is still working in this game. It's got some work to do, 50%, sometimes above 50% utilization. Obviously, if we'll go for higher FPS number, the CPU will have to work even harder. VRAM usage is currently at 13 gigabytes. So if you have a 16 gigabyte card, oh my god, what do you want, guy? No way, I do not want to fight you. Just get lost. What do you want? It's just random NPC bullying me. Get lost. Oh my god, he's kicking my ass. Right. You did it now. Get some. You want this? You take it. Come on. You asked for it. I was just walking the street. Oh my god, he's got a hammer. No. Come on. Yeah. I think you'll regret it. Oh my god. Why are they aggroing on me? No. I don't know what happened there. I had to reload because that's just the way this game is. Sometimes NPCs are kind of harsh. They'll kick your ass for no reason. But I guess that's just life in medieval ages. You look wrong at someone and they will kill you. Right, let's increase the FPS a little bit, shall we? We'll use DLSS set to quality mode. This way we can run the game at above 120 FPS. Yes, this is very nice. 137, 100. Okay, so it's not quite a consistent 120 FPS experience, but it is still quite nice to have that. And DLSS quality mode looks just as good as native resolution. The game still looks perfectly beautiful on the 27-inch monitor. Surprisingly, the GPU is actually still working at 100%, but our power consumption has reduced to around 480 watts. Interesting. To ensure a more consistent 120 FPS experience, we can lower that DLSS quality just a little bit more to DLSS Balanced. Now we're getting 140 FPS in this scene. Let's see if we'll get drops below 120. Yes, I've seen 112 FPS, 114. So there are still some dips to 110-ish FPS, although for the most part, as you can see, we're staying above 120. So what we could do is just lock our FPS. Let's lock it at 120. And this way, the GPU as well as the CPU don't have to work as hard. Frame time graph is nice and flat, which means that we're getting a smoother picture on the screen. And the GPU power is much lower now, 380 watts. Sometimes it will have to rise, obviously, in more demanding scenes. For example, right now I've seen 444 watts spike. But generally, you'll get a smoother experience if you lock your FPS, and your GPU won't have to consume as much power. CPU as well. Let's try DLSS Performance mode next. We're still at experimental graphics settings. We're now getting close to 150 FPS. We're still getting dips to around 115 FPS in some scenes, so I think there are some kind of limitations, maybe optimization issues, because no matter how far we lower our resolution upscaling quality, it still seems that there are some scenes where FPS drops to around 115 in that particular area. Same FPS. Coincidence? I think not. And I must say that even on DLSS Performance mode, the game still looks good on the 27-inch monitor. Even the finer details, such as this grass right here, still looks great. I'm actually amazed at how well DLSS 4 runs. DLSS 4 brings a significant improvement in image quality compared to DLSS 3, and that is impressive. We're actually hitting either a CPU or game engine limitation in this particular scene. As you can see, our GPU is not loaded to 100%. It's at 86%, and we're getting 145 FPS. The CPU is running at 80% utilization. So it is highly likely that the CPU is the limiting factor in this particular case. Let's lock the FPS at 120 once more using DLSS Performance mode, just to see what kind of energy efficiency we can get out of this extremely power-hungry GPU. And we're still getting like 370 to 380 watts power usage, 399, 90 watts on the CPU. Yeah, this kind of system still requires a lot of power to run, even if you lock FPS. Obviously, another way to improve performance is we can just lower the graphics quality to Ultra. So let's try that. Ultra graphics quality, DLSS Performance. Let's see what happens. Oh my, 200 plus FPS. Yeah, this is brilliant. So we could cap our FPS at even higher value than 120 to enjoy the game on the high refresh rate monitor. If you have a 240 Hz monitor, then why not take advantage of it? And I can't say that the game looks any worse on Ultra Graphics preset compared to experimental. I think it looks very similar, but the FPS is much higher. It's good to have options. If you prefer better image fluidity, then just use Ultra Graphics Quality preset. And if you want the highest level of detail, then go for experimental. Let's change DLSS to native AA and see how the game runs using the Ultra Graphics Quality preset at native 4K resolution. Alright, we're still getting well above 100 FPS, 114, 112. Pretty nice, with dips to around 100-ish. Yeah, so you don't even need DLSS to have above 100 FPS in this game. Just lower the graphics quality to ultra and you're good to go. VRAM usage is at 13 gigabytes. Moving on to the next game, this is Spider-Man 2. We are at native 4K resolution, no DLSS, no frame generation, and the graphics settings are absolutely maxed out, with ray tracing maxed out as well. But I'm not using DLSS ray reconstruction because it introduces horrible visual issues. I think it's really important that the game developers fix ray reconstruction as soon as possible, because without it, the game doesn't look as nice. Other graphics settings are also maxed out, ultra where possible, very high where that's the highest one available, and I've disabled depth of field, motion blur and all that stuff. Field of view is maxed out as well. We'll have to monitor the FPS over here because for some reason the counter at the top left corner is not working in this particular game. But as long as we have that one, it's not an issue. And take a look at that. We're getting 60 plus FPS even with ray tracing maxed out, although I did see a dip to 57 just then. So it's not a perfect 60. I've seen 50, 49, 47. Yeah, this game is kind of raw right now. Still, it's not in the best state. I'm actually disappointed with how Nixxes handled this particular port, because their previous ports are pretty good. God of War Ragnarok is pretty well optimized, and even things like Horizon and Ghost of Tsushima, those games were pretty well optimized from day one. But in this game, there are quite a few issues that they need to address. With ray tracing maxed out, our VRAM usage is above 15 gigabytes. And I really think that in a game like this, ray tracing is kind of important, because when you are just jumping around the city, swinging, and you have these beautiful reflections in the buildings, it just makes such a huge difference. And there are reflections in other materials as well. For example, side of this truck, yeah, we can see a properly ray traced reflection. It doesn't look like a mirror, it looks like something you would encounter in real world. And I see that the GPU is not working to 100%, while we're still getting like 50 plus FPS, and our CPU is at 50-ish%. I wonder, will it help if we actually disable NVIDIA Reflex? Because sometimes Reflex low latency feature does mess with the overall performance in the game. I mean, not performance, with frame rate. That did make a difference. We're now getting a consistent load on the GPU, 99%, which means that it's fully loaded, and the FPS is a little bit better. So yeah, NVIDIA Reflex in this game needs a little bit of work as well. And I don't particularly like the look of those frame rate spikes. Yeah, something is definitely off about this game. Reflex does get rid of those frame rate spikes though, so I guess it's best to leave it on, even though it has a performance hit. It doesn't have to be this way. I hope the game developers will fix these issues. In the meantime, let's see if we can improve the experience by using DLSS resolution upscaling. Let's start with DLSS quality mode. And this is better. We're now getting a more consistent 60 plus FPS experience. We're reaching 79, 80 plus sometimes even. That is nice. And surprisingly, the GPU power consumption is actually lower now as well. Sometimes it's 290, sometimes 320. The RTX 5090 appears to be not as power hungry in this particular game. Could it be because we're not actually using the entire potential of the GPU because the game is poorly optimized? That's possible. We'll have to check it out at a future date when more patches arrive. But at least with the help of DLSS, we can get a 60 FPS experience. So let's lock FPS at 60 and see if we can get a nice, smooth experience. Yes, indeed. Our frame rate is nice and smooth. This isn't bad. Pretty good. And the GPU power consumption is now much lower, 230 to 50. I wonder if we can get a 120 FPS experience using maxed out graphics. So we'll have to lower DLSS to balanced to try and make that happen. No, we're not even close because we're still getting dips to around 70-ish FPS. Yeah, we are really, really far from 120 FPS experience. Let's try DLSS Performance. Nope, it's just not happening. Not with maxed out graphics settings. We're still getting the same dips to around 70-ish FPS, despite the fact that we lowered our resolution upscaling to performance already. So this is 1080p upscaled to 4K. Nah, it's not happening. So the only way to do that would be to maybe lower graphics quality or alternatively frame generation. Let's try that. We only have 2x frame generation, regular one, so let's give it a go. Now it is a 120 FPS plus experience, because sometimes we are reaching 180 FPS. Yeah, frame generation can help you achieve that. Much better image fluidity. But would I want to play this game like this? Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, when you're just swinging around the city like this, you're not going to be focusing on finer details, because finer details is what gets destroyed a little bit by the frame generation. I don't think it's an issue in this particular game. If you want higher FPS, just use frame generation. It looks good enough. Oh, and by the way, with frame generation enabled, we are using slightly above 16 gigabytes of memory, 16.5 gigabytes right now. And I must remind you that we're still running on DLSS Performance mode. So let's see how the game looks with frame generation enabled, but with higher resolution upscaling quality. Let's set it back to balanced. Yeah, we're still getting high refresh rate experience, well above 120 FPS. So I think we could try and increase that resolution upscaling quality even higher. I've seen 125 just then. Okay. Let's go ahead and select DLSS quality mode now. Okay, we're still staying above 120 FPS for the most part, even with this graphics quality preset and this DLSS quality. The controls latency is fine. I'm still enjoying swinging about. Controls feel responsive. Yeah, that's fun. Let's see what it takes to achieve a similar kind of experience, 120 plus FPS, without the help of frame generation. We'll have to lower some graphics quality settings. Let's leave DLSS at quality for now, and let's go ahead and lower ray tracing first, because it is the most costly graphics setting. Yeah, it'll take more than that, I think, because we're still getting dips to around 60-ish FPS. Let's go ahead and select DLSS Performance mode right away to see if it is possible to get even close to 100 FPS. It doesn't look like that because we're still getting dips to 66 instead of 60. Yeah, we're not getting much out of using DLSS Performance in this particular game. That must be because of the optimization, poor optimization that this game features at the moment. I wonder what will happen if we don't use the absolutely maxed out graphics settings. Let's select very high preset. So instead of running ultra on some of these, they are reduced to very high, and even texture filtering is reduced. Let's bring it back up to 16x. That's not gonna cost a lot in terms of the GPU utilization. So I think we can afford to do that. Yeah, it doesn't look that much better. We got something like 3 FPS out of it on the lower end, because I've still seen 69 FPS, which is nice, of course, but it's not what I expected. I mean, we're lowering graphics quality settings left, right, and center, and we're nowhere near close to getting that 120 FPS experience. Let's do something else. Let's keep lowering those graphics settings. But I really want to use at least DLSS Balanced mode, not Performance, because while Performance mode still looks pretty good on the 27-inch monitor, Balanced just looks better. And I think with an expensive graphics card like the RTX 5090, we deserve the best image quality. We'll have to keep lowering that ray tracing preset, so let's set it to high now. That actually changed the image quality somewhat dramatically. Yeah, the materials don't look as nice on high. Those buildings started looking kind of washed out. That is because by lowering the ray tracing preset further, we're actually not using RTAO anymore. Yeah, that's off now. We cannot select it. What we have left is ray-traced reflections, ray-traced interiors, no ray-traced shadows, no ray-traced ambient occlusion anymore. In return, we received quite a significant performance increase. We're now getting a consistent 90 plus FPS experience 100 plus in other scenes. Although I must say that the game doesn't look as nice. Yeah, with ray-traced ambient occlusion it looked much better, and reflections, let's see. Yeah, the reflections don't look as nice. They are kind of dirty. I don't think I like this very much after having experienced the absolute pinnacle of ray tracing in this game. Yeah, it's all about the contrast. I mean, if you haven't tried ray tracing, then this looks fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this kind of presentation. But as soon as you've tasted that sweet, sweet ray tracing, it's just not the same anymore. The reflections are still there, but it's just not as nice. And because the lighting is not ray traced anymore as well, the game looks more like a video game and not like the real world. And yet we are still not at 120 plus FPS, so I guess we'll have to lower that graphics quality even further. Let's turn off ray tracing completely. Now it appears that we are getting a consistent 120 plus FPS experience. Of course, there will probably be some scenes where FPS will drop, because I did play through the game a little bit. And yeah, indeed, there are certain scenes in the game that are not well optimized at all, and the FPS just drops by so much. But at least in the city, it looks fine. Although those fluctuations in the frame rate, they're massive. And as a result, the experience doesn't feel as smooth as it could be. So one thing we could do is just lock the FPS at 120, and that way, yeah, we're getting a smoother experience. That's why I like locking FPS pretty much in every game. It's just a much better experience, and I'm using RTSS application for that, Riva Tuner. It's very nice to have. Alan Wake 2 has been updated recently to feature the latest NVIDIA technologies, geometry, as well as DLSS 4, and the latest ray reconstruction and ray tracing features. The game looks beautiful and more realistic than ever. However, as you may have noticed, even the RTX 5090 kind of struggles to run this game at native 4K resolution, 40 plus FPS. Just take a look at these settings. This is indeed native resolution, no DLSS, and high graphics quality preset, the highest ray tracing preset, which means that path tracing is enabled. Even the best graphics card on the market still needs the help of DLSS to run some of these games maxed out. Let's select DLSS quality. Now this is better. Indoors we're getting well above 60 FPS, even though there are ray-traced reflections here and ray-traced lighting inside, and outside we're getting 70 plus FPS. I absolutely love how ray-traced reflections look in this game. They make a huge difference compared to ray tracing disabled. When ray tracing is disabled, the lake looks it's just looking very unnatural, but with ray tracing it looks beautiful, and the world is looking much better, more realistic. It looks great, and the game performs pretty well in this particular scene. However, that's not the case for every scene in the game. If we decide to enter the forest, you'll see that the performance changes drastically. We're now getting 40 plus FPS. Although this is still a playable experience, this is not something that you'd probably expect from the RTX 5090. If you have such a powerful GPU, you'd probably want to play at least at 60 plus FPS. I know that I do, and to achieve that, we'll have to use a lower DLSS quality. Let's select Balanced. And that is still not quite enough to get us over that 60 FPS barrier, although we're getting 50 plus right now. Yeah, we'll need to lower DLSS quality even further, because using frame generation when we have such a low base frame rate is not a good idea. It's just going to introduce latency to the controls, and that is not pleasant. Shall we try DLSS Performance next? Let's see if that is enough to get us to where we want to be in terms of performance in the forest. And this appears to be the perfect match for the RTX 5090. Well, almost perfect, because I still see 58, 59 FPS, but it's fine. The game looks fine, and it plays smooth enough, because this is one of the most graphically demanding scenes you'll see in the game. Even in other scenes in the forest, we're getting 70 plus FPS. So I think it's okay. And the game still looks sharp. The image looks pretty good on the 27-inch monitor. The finer details are preserved pretty well. In other locations, the performance is much better. For example, indoors over here, we're getting close to 90 FPS. Beautiful, smooth experience. And in the town area, 100 plus FPS. Nice. The only downside I can think of using DLSS Performance mode compared to native resolution, or even DLSS Performance, in terms of like finer details here and there, is wires. If you see wires or string, then you will notice some shimmering, but they have to be really, really thin wires, like that over there. Let me show you closer. You see those thin wires that are coming out of those things, I don't know what they're called. I'm not an electrician. But even if we're talking about thicker wires, they still look fine. They don't look bad at all. As a result, I think that this is a perfectly good experience. Oh, another thing that I should mention is reduced quality on something like this fencing right here. From the distance, at this distance, yeah, it's not looking as good, but as you get closer, it looks fine. And it has problems even if you use DLSS quality. So yeah, that's just something, that's just a trade-off that you'll have to live with. And to be honest, it doesn't really bother me that much. I'm pretty sensitive when it comes to all kinds of artifacts on the screen. If something is breaking my immersion, then I definitely am looking to rectify that problem, even if it means lowering some settings. I will do it in order to get rid of something that is really annoying to my eyes. Since we have a high enough frame rate right now, we can try frame generation now. Let's start with 2x, shall we? Oh my god, even in the forest, we're getting above 100 FPS, sometimes 120. Yeah, this is wild. Hold on a second, let me just reset that frame rate. Hold on, is it done? Yes, it's done. We're still getting 50-ish 1% lows. That's not great. but the overall experience is smooth. I don't think that frame generation works quite well. Hold on, let me just reload the game completely. Nope, that did not resolve the issue. We're still getting really low 1% lows. Although the image feels really smooth. You wouldn't expect it from, seeing that kind of frame rate graph, but it does feel smooth. So that leads me to believe that the software does not report the frame rate consistency accurately in this case. I'm using CapFrameX. It's really good, but it appears to be not doing its job properly in this particular case. In the town area, we're getting 160 plus FPS. And hold on a second, let me just turn off that HUD and just experience the image fluidity for a little bit. Yes, I can definitely say that the image looks fluid. There is no stuttering. So I think that we should not trust that frame rate graph. Thanks to frame generation, we can have this game maxed out and still get a high refresh rate experience. Obviously, it's not gonna be perfect, but at least in terms of controls responsiveness, it looks fine. Yeah, feels fine. Honestly, I don't know why NVIDIA bothered creating that 3x and 4x frame generation, because yes, you'll get more frame rate, let's go for 3x for example, but it also lowers base frame rate, increasing controls and PC latency, and it just doesn't feel nice, and it's kind of unnecessary in some cases. For example, right now, 200 plus FPS. Yeah, do I really want that? I guess it's nice to have, but I would like to see more real frames. For example, if I had something like 120 real frames, then that would be perfect, but then 2x is enough. So 120, double that, 240, you can saturate a 240 Hz monitor, and that's your high refresh rate experience. I don't see the reason for, using 4x mode. It's just useless. But since we're at it, let's check out the 4x mode as well. And it's about what you'd expect. Just more frames. 320 now. Surprisingly, the image doesn't look as smooth now. I think that has to do something with the fact that our base FPS is probably at around 50-ish right now, maybe even lower than that. So those fake frames just can't, produce a consistent, smooth experience. That is why it is so important to have a high frame rate to begin with. But if you are in just some kind of slow-paced scene, then it's fine. But then, again, why would you need that many frames in a slow-paced scene? 120 is plenty. Getting 320 FPS is just not something that is necessary, at least not right now. Maybe in the future, when we'll get 480 Hz 4K monitors, maybe then that will be a feature worth enabling. But as it stands right now, I personally will stick to using 2x frame generation, which means that even if you have something like the RTX 40 series cards, then it's fine. You can still use that 2x frame generation and yeah, not worry about upgrading to RTX 50. There's one more thing I'd like to check. Let's disable frame generation. Let's disable DLSS. So it's now native 4K resolution, and I want to see how the game performs without ray tracing. I loaded into the most intense scene right away, and check this out. Native 4K, no ray tracing, and high graphics quality preset. We're getting above 60 FPS. 69, nice. 70, 64 in this particular scene. So yeah, this game is extremely GPU demanding, even without ray tracing. But at least now, with the RTX 5090, we can get a consistent 60 plus FPS experience at native 4K. Of course, that is when we are not using ray tracing. In conclusion, the performance the RTX 5090 delivers at 4K resolution is absolutely phenomenal. However, that comes at a cost of higher power consumption. As you may have seen, it is quite power hungry, yeah, indeed, and as a result, it produces a lot of heat. But in return, you can just crank up pretty much all the graphics quality settings. However, in some games, you will still have to use DLSS resolution upscaling to make it work. But DLSS 4 is so good that you can simply use DLSS Performance mode and not worry about, taking a massive hit in terms of image quality. DLSS Performance mode still looks great on the 4K monitor, at least on the 27-inch that I have here. Another pleasant thing that I've noticed about owning the RTX 5090 is that I just don't have to worry about video memory at all. It has 32 gigabytes. That's more than enough to do anything you want in any game. The MSI Gaming Trio model specifically is pretty good. I mean, I have no complaints about it so far. I will make a dedicated review about this graphics card specifically, taking a look at noise, temperatures, as well as other things related to the GPU, but that will be in a separate video, so make sure that you're subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the RTX 5090 is simply the best. If you want the best, then this is the only option you have. Let me know what you think about this setup, and don't forget to reward my work with a like if you enjoyed the video. I'm still a little bit sick, so I apologize for my voice. But I am getting better, and more tests of the RTX 5090 are definitely coming this week. I'll be testing it more in other resolutions, ultra-wide, 1440p. Yeah, stay tuned for that. Make sure that you're subscribed. And it was I, Vadim. I'll see you in the next video.